The world went to hell, and the only ones who could save it were hunters, powered by the system. Out of all of them, only a handful reached the absolute top. Chinen Ryoga was one of them, a 9-star hunter from Japan who commanded an army of the dead. But being that strong made him a target for everyone else at the top. Now, his allies are gone, and the city is a graveyard. The 7 great families finally made their move to wipe him out. Ryoga is barely hanging on, clutching a cracked pocket watch in his bloodied hand. He's missing an arm and bleeding out, but he's not done yet. He glares ahead, his face a mask of dried blood and grit. His executioner is just sitting there, watching him suffer. Dmitry Andreevich Romanov, the incarnation of Odin, looks down with total arrogance. Ryoga asks him why they're doing this. Dmitry tells him it's because he refused to bow down to the 7 great families. He laughs, calling Ryoga's independence an insult to the gods. The Undying King doesn't look very immortal right now. Despite the pain, Ryoga cracks a small, defiant smile. Dmitry just stares back, unimpressed by the dying man's grit. He raises his hand, charging up enough divine power to end this once and for all. Ryoga struggles to his feet, refusing to die on his knees. Dark energy begins to swirl around his missing limb. The ground splits as shadows begin to crawl out from the abyss. Dozens of skeletons rise to protect their master, their red eyes glowing in the dark. Dmitry doesn't care about the fodder and prepares to unleash his ultimate magic. A massive pillar of light erupts from his hand, turning the sky gold. Ryoga looks up as the divine beam descends right on top of him. Dmitry calls out his attack. Lord of Vermilion. The blast hits with the force of a falling star, incinerating everything in sight. In the middle of the carnage, Ryoga starts laughing like a madman. Dmitry's face drops as he realizes something is very wrong. The pocket watch starts absorbing the massive amount of divine energy from the attack. Ryoga holds the watch high, using his enemy's own power to fuel the artifact. The gear starts spinning at impossible speeds as the ticking grows louder. A blinding white light explodes from the watch, swallowing the entire battlefield. Ryoga gives Dmitry a final, blood-soaked grin. The energy begins to tear the very fabric of space and time apart. Dmitry tries to move, but it's too late. The process has already started. The watch pulses, with an intense, rhythmic glow. Ryoga flips him off one last time as his physical body begins to dissolve. The hands of the clock spin backward, erasing decades of history in an instant. Everything vanishes into a void of pure light. Suddenly, Chinen Ryoga sits up in bed, gasping for air, as if he just came back from the dead. He clutches his chest, feeling his heart racing in a body that's whole again. He's back in his old, cramped apartment, exactly where he started 23 years ago. He looks down at the artifact that made this miracle possible. He's younger now, but his expression is as grim as ever. The broken Kronos' pocket watch is useless now, but it's already done its job. With his memories intact, he has a head start that no one else can match. The system appears, inviting Chinen Ryoga to choose his starting class. His level is reset, but his clear mind trait gives him absolute resistance to mental attacks. Instead of picking a standard class like mage or warrior, he decides to forge his own path. He knows a secret way to unlock a power that shouldn't even exist yet. He throws on a jacket and heads out to spend every cent he has. He arrives at the Natsuhabara Hunter Market, a massive mall for supernatural gear. Inside, he's greeted by an unknown clerk, a polite retail worker with light brown hair tied back in a bun. He ignores the flashy weapons and heads straight for the counter. The clerk is taken aback when he asks for a specific, notorious item. She tries to warn him, but Ryoga isn't interested in her professional advice. He walks away with his purchase, ignoring the curious looks from other shoppers. The clerk is left staring in shock, wondering why anyone would buy a cursed item. He opens the box to reveal a plain, dark ring that feels cold to the touch. It's the Ring of Dark Gloom, a rare object known for consuming the minds of its users. He doesn't hesitate for a second before sliding the ring onto his finger. Corrupt, black energy immediately surges out and starts wrapping around his hand. Most people would be screaming in agony, but he just smiles. His consciousness is pulled into a dark mental plane for the ring's trial. A massive, golden vision of Dmitry Andreevich Romanov appears in his mind like a god. Ryoga stands in front of the giant, completely unfazed by its presence. The phantom god looks down at him with contempt. It unleashes a massive beam of holy light to crush his spirit. Ryoga just stands there and takes the hit without flinching. He walks forward as the mental space starts to crack around him. He looks up with a cold smirk, his eye glowing with a blue light. He stands tall as the curse breaks, finally unlocking the hidden Necromancer class. The Ring of Dark Gloom pulses with a cold, spectral energy. Chinen Ryoga smirks, feeling the weight of the artifact in his hand. A system prompt appears, offering 4 distinct classes based on his unique traits. Without hesitation, he taps the screen to select Necromancer. The system confirms his choice, explaining that a Necromancer draws power from the souls of the dead. He even gains a special trait right off the bat, Guide of Death. This trait is a massive help, cutting the mana cost for his summoning magic by 20%. He crosses his arms, looking pleased with the initial setup. Ryoga continues browsing through the interface, curious about what else he just unlocked. 2 new active skills pop up, Raise Undead and Bone Control. One lets him create minions, and the other allows him to weaponize the remains of his enemies. He rubs his chin, already calculating the best way to utilize these powers in the upcoming hunt. The blue light of the status window flickers and vanishes. Ryoga looks around the sterile room, ready to move on to the next phase. His eyes flare with a sharp yellow light as his focus intensifies. High above the ocean, an airplane carries a fresh batch of hunters toward their destination. Yuma looks out the window, camera ready, while the rest of the rookies try to stay calm. The world is still governed by the legends of the constellations, the titans who sided with Olympus and now watch over the hunters below. Back in a secluded location, Ryoga stands before a weathered altar. He pulls out a cracked pocket watch, the key to unlocking a hidden source of power. With a confident grin, he raises the artifact into the air. He slams the watch down onto the stone surface. Energy erupts from the altar, tearing through the reality of the room. When the light fades, Ryoga finds himself standing in a massive, shimmering cathedral. He's made it to the Library of Knowledge. A titanic figure emerges from the mist, his presence shaking the very foundations of the mental space. The giant entity looms over Ryoga, glowing with an intimidating divine light. The spirit looks down, his expression unreadable as he observes the small human who dared to enter. Ryoga stands his ground, showing the entity the pocket watch he used to breach the gates. The giant narrows his eyes, seemingly surprised to see such an item in the hands of a mere rookie. He crosses his massive arms, waiting to hear what this intruder has to say. Ryoga explains his intent, his voice steady despite the massive size difference. The spirit leans in closer, examining the artifact and the boy's resolve. Ryoga lets out a slight smirk, knowing he has the giant's attention now. A heavy aura of power radiates from the entity, testing Ryoga's mental strength. He doesn't flinch. He knows exactly what he wants from this place. Flashes of the other powerful hunters who once stood here appear in his mind, but none of them had his unique advantage. The giant lets out a low, rumbling laugh, seemingly entertained by the boy's audacity. His face softens slightly, acknowledging Ryoga's potential. Seeing that he's made an impression, Ryoga keeps the pressure on. A ancient card depicts Kronos, the titan who governs both the harvest and time. But it's the dual meaning of his scythe that matters most, a symbol of harvest and a symbol of death. Death and rebirth are 2 sides of the same coin. The entity roars with laughter, the sound echoing through the vast library. Ryoga readies himself, gripping the watch tight as the real negotiation begins. He shouts out his challenge, demanding access to the forbidden knowledge. The spirit watches him intently, his eyes glowing with a renewed interest. Chinen Ryoga grits his teeth, the spiritual pressure in the library reaching a breaking point. The giant spirit, Kronos, gathers a mass of golden energy in the palm of his hand. He doesn't hold back, unleashing the full weight of his legacy upon the boy. Blinding light floods the entire cathedral as the transfer of power begins. The giant's massive hand descends, the divine force threatening to crush Ryoga's very existence. Ryoga struggles to keep his eyes open, his body trembling from the sheer intensity of the energy. He let out a shout as his soul is forcibly rewritten by the ancient power. Forced to his knees, Ryoga fights to stay conscious while golden lightning arcs across his skin. The entity watches in silence, waiting to see if his new vessel can actually contain such a spirit. Even as his vision begins to fail, Ryoga's determination doesn't waver for a second. Back in the real world, Ryoga steps out of the terminal, calmly pulling his suitcase behind him. A confident smirk plays on his lips. The gamble worked perfectly. But he's not exactly alone. A miniature version of the old giant spirit is now hovering right next to him. The little guy is already bouncing around excitedly, much to Ryoga's growing annoyance. A system notification confirms the change. A new star has risen, the Reaper who defies heaven. Ryoga walks through the airport, trying his best to act normal, while a literal god floating over his shoulder. This is the true manifestation of Kronos, the god of time and death, now bound to his soul. The miniature Kronos strikes a pose, clearly enjoying the new surroundings. He starts pestering Ryoga, who manages to keep a stoic face despite the distraction. A new blue screen appears, displaying a massive upgrade to his basic abilities. He's gained an additional trait called White Knight, which allows him to convert holy power into spiritual energy. It's a revolutionary change combining 2 opposite forces to fuel his necromancy. Even Ryoga is slightly taken aback by the sheer potential this opens up for him. He checks the rest of his updated stats, his tiny partner cheering him on every step of the way. With everything in place, he knows he's finally ready to start the real work. He arrives at the edge of a lush, sun-drenched forest, where his first major hunt is about to begin. A massive blue portal splits open right in the middle of a city park. The system screen reveals it's a 1-star dungeon called the Ancient Garden, with a decent mana density for a solo run. Chinen Ryoga stands in front of the gate, looking like he's just out for a casual stroll. Other hunters are hanging around, getting hyped for their first time entering a gate. Yuma is there with his party, prepping for the hunt like any other rookie group. But Ryoga isn't waiting for a team. He just keeps walking straight toward the glowing light. Yuma spots him and calls out, surprised to see someone going in alone. He asks Ryoga if he's really sure he'll be okay without a party, sounding pretty concerned. The girl with him doesn't seem too sure about it either, but Ryoga doesn't even look back. He just gives a little smirk as he gets closer to the portal. A quick system message confirms it. He's officially entered the Ancient Garden. Inside, it's actually pretty peaceful, just a sun-drenched forest filled with flowers. But the silence doesn't last long, as a goblin with a rusty knife starts creeping through the bushes. The protagonist senses it immediately, a cold glint appearing in his eyes. The goblin lunges from the trees, trying to catch him off guard from above. It screams as it flies through the air, blade aimed right for his throat. Ryoga doesn't even flinch. He just waits for the monster to get in range. He triggers his White Knight trait, and suddenly the air is thick with mana. Shadowy hands wrap around the goblin's neck, choking the life out of it midair. His eyes glow a bright, chilling blue as he watches the struggle. He stands there calmly, while the dark energy does all the heavy lifting. The goblin hits the dirt, stone dead, right at his feet. This isn't the first one either. A whole pile of dead monsters is stacked up behind him. Naturally, the level up notification pops up to reward him for the work. That's when the Library of Knowledge spirit floats in, looking like a tiny, glowing guide. Ryoga checks his hand, feeling the power from the level up settle in. The little spirit is all smiles, greeting him with open arms, like they're old friends. He turns his attention back to the fresh kill on the ground. A dark grin spreads across his face as he gets ready to show off some real necromancy. He commands the dead to rise, and teal flames start swirling around the corpse. The goblin's eyes snap open, now glowing with a hollow white light. It's officially a zombie now, an undead servant under Ryoga's total control. He looks pretty satisfied with the result. Just then, 3 more goblins jump out of the brush, thinking they've found an easy target. The protagonist doesn't even move. He just lets his new zombie step up to handle them. He crosses his arms, curious to see how his latest creation holds up in a real scrap. The zombie goblin doesn't disappoint, charging into the fray with zero hesitation. It's brutal, tearing into one of its former friends with pure aggression. It slams another goblin into the ground, completely overpowering it. Seeing their buddy get shredded, the last couple of goblins decide to make a run for it. But Ryoga is way ahead of them, catching one by the neck before it can disappear. He drains the life force right out of it, picking up some easy stat points for his trouble. The forest clearing is a total bloodbath, as the goblins start turning on each other. Ryoga's undead servant is relentless, sinking its teeth into its former kin without a second thought. Ryoga just stands by and watches the carnage, looking like he's observing a rehearsal rather than a life or death struggle. Every kill feeds him, he catches another stat boost as his strength and agility tick up by the second. He's not just winning, he's farming, and he clearly likes the results he's getting. More goblins are creeping out of the shadows, drawn in by the noise, but they have no idea what they're walking into. The protagonist doesn't even lift a finger, letting his growing squad of undead handle all the heavy lifting. He activates Raise Undead again, turning the fresh corpses into brand new recruits for his army. With his stats jumping by nearly 100%, he's basically a one-man army at this point. He gives a cold, satisfied smirk, knowing exactly how this battle is going to end. The undead pack lunges forward, overwhelming the living goblins with pure numbers and zero fear. It's total chaos in the clearing, as the monsters get torn apart by their own dead. One goblin gets a blade straight through the chest before it can even let out a scream. The undead don't stop until every last one of the stragglers is finished off. It's a brutal sight, but for Ryoga, it's just efficient resource management. He keeps moving deeper into the woods, with the Library of Knowledge spirit floating along like a tiny, bored spectator. He feels the mana pulsing through him, his hand glowing with that eerie teal energy again. He stands over the pile of bodies, draining every last drop of mana he can get his hands on. His undead scouts push ahead, searching for anything else that might be hiding in the brush. They find a few stragglers trying to bolt, but there's no escaping this forest. Suddenly, an archer from Yuma's party draws his bow, aiming at something in the distance. A flaming arrow flies through the air, catching a goblin right in the throat. The undead goblins stop in their tracks, their hollow eyes staring back at the new arrivals. Ryoga looks over, his calm expression shifting into something a bit more alert. Yuma and his group finally catch up, and they look absolutely horrified by the scene in front of them. The protagonist just stares them down, while his little spirit guide watches with an amused look. Yuma stands his ground, but he's clearly rattled by the army of corpses Ryoga is leading. Ryoga's eyes flare with a golden light, letting them know he isn't someone to be messed with. Yuma's teammate steps up, readying her bow to provide some cover fire. Yuma braces himself behind his shield, trying his best to look like a leader in the face of the orc horde. Shinen Ryoga is busy calculating his next move, while the Library of Knowledge Spirit, a floating white-bearded guide, hovers by his side. Yuma and the archer are clearly feeling the heat, looking pretty shaken up by the intensity of the fight. Ryoga doesn't even look bothered. He's just standing there with his spirit, completely absorbed in his own thoughts. Yuma speaks up, but you can tell he's just trying to keep his composure while the sweat pours down his face. Ryoga keeps his cool, already planning his mana consumption for the next few minutes. He tells Yuma to focus on the cleanup, while his new orc zombies handle all the heavy lifting. A weird glint in his eyes shows he's already moved on to his next objective. They find a mana stone embedded right in the chest of a fallen orc. Yuma looks at Ryoga, finally realizing he's basically just an extra in this guy's show. Ryoga keeps it simple, just pick up the rocks and try not to get in the way. The rest of the party stands back, watching the protagonist with a mix of awe and genuine fear. The side characters start whispering about how he doesn't even seem human anymore. Ryoga just yawns in the background. This whole dungeon crawl is basically a chore to him. He stops for a second to check his mana pool and see how much he's got left. Yuma calls out to him, trying his best to keep the group together. He reaches out to stop him, but Ryoga's already heading off towards something else. He tells them he's got his own errands to run and gives them a casual wave goodbye. The group is just left standing there, completely lost as to what he's actually up to. Yuma realizes there's a massive gap between them and this guy's power level. Ryoga heads deeper into the woods, with his undead squad flanking him. One of the other hunters is struggling just to carry the load of the loot. The archer girl finally hits her limit and has to take a breather against a tree. Yuma finds a massive pile of mana crystals, a total jackpot for the guild. He looks back at Ryoga, still trying to wrap his head around how he's so efficient. The Necromancer is already back at it, casually grabbing an orc while his zombies go wild. Dead bodies are piling up everywhere, and Ryoga's just walking through it like it's a park. Yuma tries to make small talk, but the awkwardness is off the charts right now. One of the zombies goes straight for the neck, finishing off another orc straggler. Ryoga watches his minions wrap things up, with zero effort on his part. He turns back to Yuma with a grin, looking like they're just hanging out. The rest of the party looks like they're about to pass out from all the stress. The forest floor is a graveyard now, littered with dead orcs as far as the eye can see. Ryoga pulls up his status window to check exactly how much he gained from the hunt. His stats are through the roof. This grind session is definitely paying off in a big way. He smirks, knowing he's getting stronger by the second. He looks toward the deeper parts of the forest, sensing something much bigger nearby. More orcs show up, but Ryoga just sees them as more walking mana batteries. An orc scout with a skull staff watches from the shadows, looking absolutely terrified. Ryoga walks forward with total confidence, leading his reluctant group deeper in. The teammate asks him what they're actually looking for, but he's not ready to share his secrets yet. A mob of bloodthirsty goblins charges in from the shadows, their eyes glowing red with pure rage. Ryoga just stands his ground, not even flinching as the horde closes the distance. One of his undead summons intercepts the charge, burying its fist into a goblin's face with bone-shattering force. Blood sprays as the zombies tear through the front line with brutal efficiency. Another goblin gets absolutely shredded, proving that these summons aren't just for show. Ryoga watches the carnage unfold from the sidelines, looking as cold and detached as the dead he commands. His orc zombie lets out a bone-chilling roar that echoes through the trees, signaling the next phase of the attack. It lunges at the nearest enemy, completely overpowering the goblin with its raw undead strength. Yuma and the rest of the party are just frozen in place, paralyzed by the sheer brutality of the Necromancer's power. That's when the shaman steps out, brandishing a skull staff, and looking to turn the tide in the goblin's favor. He slams the staff down, and the ground practically explodes from the impact of his dark magic. The blast sends the remaining goblins into a frenzy, their eyes burning even brighter with madness. They're foaming at the bit now, ready to rip anything in their path to shreds. But Ryoga's zombies aren't intimidated, standing tall as a wall of undead defense. The shaman glares at the group, clearly realizing he's dealing with more than just regular hunters. Bone spikes erupt from the earth, pinning several monsters in place before they can even get close. A zombie follows up with a heavy strike, keeping the pressure on the shaman's forces. Ryoga just gives them a confident smirk. He's got this whole situation exactly where he wants it. The shaman grips his staff tighter, getting ready for one last desperate move to save his tribe. He slams it down again, and a system alert pops up. The Curse of Madness has officially been activated. The shockwave hits Yuma's group hard, forcing them to huddle together to withstand the dark energy. One goblin manages to break through the chaos, charging straight for Ryoga with its blade raised. But it doesn't even get close before the entire front line turns into a bloody mess of limbs and blue energy. The forest floor is quickly becoming a graveyard of broken bodies. Ryoga looks almost bored, waiting for the shaman to show him something actually challenging. The shaman starts chanting, dark energy swirling around that creepy skull staff as he pours in his remaining mana. That's when Ryoga's expression shifts into something much more predatory and dangerous. He reaches out, and the air around him starts to warp with necromantic power. The shaman finally starts to sweat, realizing his curse hasn't done a single thing to slow this guy down. In a flash, Ryoga closes the gap and snatches the staff right out of the monster's hands. The shaman slumps over, looking completely broken after losing his source of power. A new message flashes. The goblins have snapped out of their madness, but the recoil is tanking their stats by 30%. Ryoga holds the skull staff up like a trophy, a dark smile playing on his lips as he prepares for the next level of the grind. Ryoga pulls out a new trick, Bone Control. It lets him move bones like puppets, just by infusing them with mana. He looks completely unfazed, even as the boss monster goes off the rails. Dark energy swirls around his staff as he prepares to end this. The Orc Lord charges in a blind fury, thinking it has the upper hand. It's completely lost its mind in berserk mode, but Ryoga just skewers the beast from the inside out, forcing its own bones to erupt through its chest. The monster falls. It's a clean kill, leaving Ryoga standing over the corpse. He checks his mana reserves. That last move definitely took a chunk out of his bar. Yuma and the rest of the scouts finally catch up, staring at the carnage in total disbelief. Ryoga doesn't waste any time and starts harvesting materials from the boss. He fills a bottle with the dark, concentrated blood of the Orc Lord. He looks back at the group, ready to pack it in. The entire orc village has been turned into a graveyard. Ryoga leads the way out, looking like he just finished a light jog. The team follows behind, absolutely drained from lugging all that gear. They make it back to the city hub, where the usual crowd is milling about. Ryoga stops and tells Yuma he's heading back into the dungeon solo. Yuma stares at him, wondering if the guy has a death wish. But Ryoga's expression doesn't change. He's dead serious. The rest of the subordinates look just as shocked. They're ready to drop from exhaustion. He tells them to handle the loot while he takes care of some personal business. He taps a bag of mana stones with his staff, marking the haul. He's got much bigger things on his mind than just pocketing some crystals. A red magic circle flares up under his staff as he activates a skill. He tells them to get some rest while they can. His eyes are focused on the path ahead. He's not done with this dungeon yet. Yuma just watches him, still trying to process the day. The scouts look on as their leader prepares to head back into the thick of it. Ryoga gives them a confident smirk. Everything is going exactly according to plan. He waves them off and disappears back into the wild. Deep in the dungeon, the scenery is almost peaceful, despite the monsters. He uses life drain on a fresh corpse, feeling the mana flow back into him. Meanwhile, the rest of the team is collapsed on the grass, completely beat. Yuma is struggling just to breathe after the mountain of work they just finished. But they can't complain about the haul. The bags are overflowing with red mana stones. Ryoga, on the other hand, is marching forward with his new squad of orc zombies. The Library of Knowledge Spirit pops up, probably to lecture him about his next move. He scans the forest, looking for a very specific landmark from his memories. The woods open up to a quiet stream flowing through the brush. Suddenly, a pack of frog-like monsters leaps out from the shadows. His undead orcs react instantly, charging ahead with ghostly blue energy. They tear through the mobs with ease, doing all the heavy lifting for their master. Ryoga's undead orcs are tearing through the frog monsters like they're nothing. One of the zombies finishes off a mob with a quick spear thrust, while Ryoga watches from the side. Dark energy surges around him as he prepares to finish the rest himself. The frog monsters are getting hit with a weird debuff as they try to close in. The system identifies it as an oil shower. It makes physical attacks way less effective once it sticks. The mob is covered in a slick, shimmering coat of oil, making it a pain to deal with. Ryoga doesn't care about the debuff and lands a heavy physical strike anyway. His skull-tipped weapon skewers another frog right through the chest. Energy slashes rip through the remaining pack, ending the skirmish in seconds. Ryoga checks his stats. Maintaining this many summons is draining his spiritual power fast. He takes a breath and regains his focus. He's got to reach his goal before he runs dry. He keeps moving forward, his army of shadows following close behind. He reaches a clearing and spots exactly what he was looking for. The massive spirit of Sora Kashiwagi looms over him, a silent observer of the ancient trial. He finds the heart of the ruins, an ancient altar marked with complex geometric patterns. Ryoga explores the area with his little library spirit assistant floating by his shoulder. He picks up a strange, pulsating green heart that seems to be the key to this place. The little spirit watches closely as Ryoga examines the artifact. He pulls out the bottle of orc blood he collected and starts pouring it over the heart. The green organ absorbs the blood and starts to glow with a dark, rhythmic light. Ryoga's eyes glow with the same green energy as the artifact syncs with his power. The system confirms he's uncovered the hidden secret and is being moved to the trial grounds. He's suddenly teleported into the center of a massive, ancient arena. He stands ready with his summons, waiting for whatever challenge the trial throws at him. Lightning crackles at the edge of the pit, signaling the start of the fight. A massive scaly claw steps into the arena, shaking the ground with every step. Ryoga breaks a sweat. This is on a completely different level than the orcs. Then the system drops a bombshell. The trial is for one person only, meaning he's on his own. He doesn't flinch. His eye glows with determination as he faces the challenge head-on. A massive Dragonian warrior emerges from the light, ready to test Ryoga's worth. Dark shadows and monster silhouettes set the mood for the fight ahead. The Orc Lord stares down its opponent, steam hissing from its mouth. The Library of Knowledge Spirit finds the whole thing hilarious, while Shinen Ryoga keeps a straight face. Ryoga isn't alone anymore. He's got a pack of glowing green plague zombies backing him up. He can feel the heat of the battle, but he's not backing down yet. It's a classic David versus Goliath setup in the middle of a massive arena. The monster is clearly confused about why Ryoga is just standing there with those frogs. Ryoga holds his hand out, and the mana starts to hum around him. Up close, these plague zombies are definitely the stuff of nightmares. A notification pops up confirming the transformation is a success. Ryoga's got that confident look again, with his little spirit guide floating nearby. He walks forward, leading his new undead squad into the fray. The Orc Lord doesn't waste time and charges in like a freight train. It swats the small summons away like they're annoying flies. The beast even tries to take a literal bite out of the zombies. A massive splash of green blood hits the ground as the summons are crushed. The Orc Lord wipes the gunk off its face, looking more pissed than actually hurt. Ryoga just gives a sharp little smile, looking like everything is going according to plan. The boss slams its fist down, shattering the arena floor. It follows up with a heavy lunge, aiming to end this right now. Ryoga stands perfectly still as the massive shadow looms over him. His staff starts to glow, activating a temporary defense boost. He catches the monster's huge claw right on the handle of his staff. The block holds, and a shockwave of light ripples out from the impact. The Orc Lord pulls back for another charge, refusing to give him a break. Ryoga sees his opening and lunges forward with the staff. He connects, driving the weapon right into the monster's gut. That one definitely stung, and the boss lets out a deafening roar. The zombies seize the moment and swarm all over the distracted monster. They're like leeches, latching onto its back and staying there. One of them goes boom, drenching the boss in toxic green sludge. Ryoga just watches it all go down with a satisfied smirk. The Orc Lord finally hits its limit and drops to its knees. Ryoga raises his staff, ready to put an end to this. He walks over to the defeated beast as the dust starts to settle. He channels his energy into a final blast of holy power. It's official. The system confirms the trial is cleared. The Library of Knowledge Spirit floats over, looking pretty impressed with the performance. As a reward, he picks up a permanent buff called the Crest of Endurance. Ryoga takes a second to look over his new supreme grade prize. The Orc Lord collapses for good, its body finally giving out. Ryoga holds his hand out to finish things off as his mana surges. Chinen Ryoga takes a moment to process everything that just went down after the fight. Outside, the sun hangs over a ruined city skyline that's seen much better days. He makes his way to a quiet warehouse tucked away from the busy main streets. A sudden blast rips through the wall, nearly knocking him off his feet. He waves away the smoke, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Through the dust, he sees someone peering out from the shadows of the building. It's Yuma, looking like he hasn't slept in a week, and just barely survived that explosion. A golden seal floats above him. It's the mark of a high-level crafter. Ryoga walks through the rubble to meet him, keeping a perfectly cool head. He offers a hand, ready to cut a deal that Yuma won't be able to ignore. The two of them have a quick, frantic back and forth about their next move. Ryoga lays out his terms, while Yuma tries to get his bearings after the blast. Yuma looks like he's about to lose it when he hears what Ryoga wants him to do. The lab is filled with all sorts of strange equipment and bubbling test tubes. He gets incredibly intense, practically yelling as he stares at his latest experiment. Ryoga watches him work, waiting for the right moment to step in. He picks up a scalpel, explaining that his own blood is the key ingredient they need. Without a second thought, Ryoga makes a clean cut right across his forearm. He lets the blood flow directly into the waiting glass vial. His mana starts to react with the wound, creating a strange white glow on his arm. He holds up the vial of high-grade blood, looking satisfied with the results. Yuma's face lights up. This is exactly what he's been looking for to finish his research. He holds the sample like it's pure gold, his eyes wide with excitement. With the business done for now, Ryoga turns and starts to head out. He hands over the final materials, leaving the researcher to get back to his work. Ryoga's got a dark smirk on his face, knowing he's one step closer to his goal. Shinin Ryoga hands over a test tube filled with a glowing red substance. Yuma takes the tube, looking completely baffled by what he's supposed to do with it. Ryoga just gives him a creepy, knowing grin, clearly hiding the real reason behind the request. Over in the corner of the lab, a massive blue dragon corpse is sprawled out in a bathtub. Yuma eventually gets to work, surrounded by chemical equipment and beakers. Ryoga watches silently from the side, waiting for the results of the experiment. While Ryoga casually inspects the corpse, Yuma starts panicking in the background. Yuma slams his hands down, yelling about how ridiculous Ryoga's demands have become. Ryoga just walks away with a smug look, ignoring the guy's constant complaining. The tiny library of knowledge spirit pops up to chat with Ryoga as he thinks back. He remembers a time when Yuma was kicked out of a massive corporation, left with nothing but his belongings in a box. Ryoga explains that even though Yuma did all the work, his boss was the one who took all the credit. He turns back to the present, ready to move on to the next step. Ryoga holds out a small, dark object on a tray for Yuma to see. He drops the suspicious item right into the researcher's hand. Ryoga looks on with a sharp gaze, focusing on the progress they've made. He lets out a dark smirk while Yuma wonders what exactly is going to happen to the corpse. Ryoga starts pouring a vial of glowing green liquid directly onto the dragon's remains. Purple mana flares up from Ryoga's hand as he begins the necromantic ritual. The two of them spend the next few hours grinding up materials for the final concoction. Yuma is clearly reaching his limit, sweating through the hard labor while Ryoga stays focused. Finally, Ryoga declares the job done as the monster's body starts to pulse with energy. He stretches his arms, satisfied that it only took a few panels to finish the prep. Ryoga walks off to check on something else, leaving a tired Yuma behind. Ryoga stares down at the finished product, his expression unreadable. A final test tube of blood sits glowing on the rack under the lab lights. He turns his head slightly when Yuma starts to speak up. Yuma clutches his chest, looking like he's finally found the courage to ask a serious question. He stands there for a moment, the silence in the lab becoming a bit awkward. Yuma looks away, clearly feeling the weight of the secrets Ryoga is keeping. Ryoga gives him a reassuring smirk, but his mind is already elsewhere. His gaze turns cold as he focuses back on his own agenda. He pulls out his phone and takes a call, ready to move on to the next phase. A short time later, the scene shifts to a sunlit, overgrown forest. Yuma and a small team of hunters prepare for combat, weapons drawn and ready. Ryoga just walks past them, looking like he's out for a casual stroll. He leads the group deeper into the brush, his hands tucked into his pockets. Ryoga has a faint smile on his face, which only makes Yuma and the others even more nervous. He stops and carefully peers through the leaves to scout the path ahead. The party creeps through the tall grass, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Suddenly, a massive orc lunges out from the shadows, brandishing a spear. The hunters are caught completely off guard as the monster roars in their faces. Ryoga grips the handle of his weapon, ready to jump into the fray. He reaches out, green mana swirling around his hand as he kicks off a skill. An orc lunges forward, swinging a heavy spear with a feral snarl. The spear whizzes through the air, aimed directly at the hunters. Yuma watches the attack with a calm, almost bored smirk. Ryoga doesn't move an inch, his mana flaring even brighter as he prepares his counter. A sharp trail of dark energy slices through the air toward the charging monster. The strike hits home, dark spikes tear into the orc, sending a spray of blood into the air. Ryoga just smirks, enjoying how easily his power is cutting through the enemies. The orc collapses in a heap, its body riddled with wounds. Another one takes its place, charging through the undergrowth with a roar. Ryoga remains stoic as the beast closes the gap between them. A massive impact rocks the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust and energy. Yuma steps in with his glowing green shield, taking the brunt of the hit. From behind the protection, Ryoga prepares his next necromantic attack. Dark energy swirls around the orc's feet before striking out from the shadows. Multiple black spikes burst through the monster's chest, ending the fight instantly. The duo stands over the fallen enemies as the surrounding area is stained with blood. Yuma looks a little rattled by how quickly things escalated. Ryoga casually discusses the plan with the rest of the party as they move forward. Yuma still seems on edge, probably worried about whatever else is hiding in these woods. Ryoga reveals a new secret weapon, a massive orc zombie with glowing blue eyes. They arrive at their true target, a towering wooden fortress guarded by an orc army. Ryoga looks pretty satisfied with the outcome of that fight. Behind him, Yuma and the others are just staring, completely floored by what they just saw. The massive orc berserker is down for the count, lying dead in the tall grass. Ryoga stands over the body, watching as dark energy starts to swirl around the kill. It's a clean victory, and the beast isn't getting back up this time. A system window pops up, looks like he's picking up some seriously high-grade loot. Later that night, the team sets up camp to recover from the day's insanity. Ryoga keeps things casual, though he's clearly thinking a few steps ahead. Everything seems quiet in the forest, but the tension hasn't totally faded. Yuma and the crew agree to the plan, trusting their leader despite how crazy things are getting. Ryoga even has his new orc summons hanging out by the fire, which is a choice. The rest of the guys finally pass out, exhausted from the raid. Ryoga stays awake, sitting alone on a ridge under the full moon. He checks out the dark energy pulsing through his hands, feeling his power grow. Suddenly, he's transported to a massive, glowing library, the secret archive of the previous Lord of Death. He starts browsing through the ancient scrolls and books left behind for him. Most of it is just basic beginner stuff, which honestly just pisses him off. He keeps looking, searching for something that's actually worth his time. Finally, he finds a book with a complex magic circle and settles in to study it. His eyes glow as the forbidden knowledge starts sinking in. A system alert confirms he's mastered a new skill, just as the sun begins to rise. Back at camp, the scout is still sound asleep, completely oblivious. He groggily opens his eyes, expecting a peaceful morning. Instead, he finds a massive undead orc staring him right in the face. He falls back in a total panic, screaming his head off while the others just watch. Yuma tries to calm him down, explaining that these monsters are actually on their side now. Ryoga just smirks, clearly enjoying the scout's terrified reaction. He's got a whole squad of these armored orc zombies ready to follow his every command. They're much more intimidating as undead than they ever were alive. With his new army in tow, Ryoga leads the group deeper into the forest. They reach a high point just as the sunset paints the sky in deep reds. It's a weird sight, a small group of humans walking side by side with a pack of monsters. Below them sits a massive orc fortress, heavily fortified and ready for war. Inside, the orcs are on high alert, sensing that something is coming for them. A squad of spear-wielding orcs charges out of the gate to intercept the intruders. Ryoga doesn't even flinch, calling on his power as his hand starts to glow. A blast of energy slams into the front line, scattering the orcs like bowling pins. He draws a long, bone-like weapon, preparing to lead the charge himself. One of the larger orcs roars, hoisting a massive red axe high into the air. From the ramparts, orc archers take aim and let loose a volley of arrows. The sky fills with black shafts raining down on the group. Yuma steps up, manifesting a glowing shield that blocks the entire attack. One of the team's archers takes aim, her crossbow glowing with heat. She lets fly a massive spread of flaming arrows that lights up the entire battlefield. The orcs don't even have time to react before the projectiles start tearing through their ranks. Ryoga just watches the chaos with his arms crossed, while the Library of Knowledge spirit floats nearby, looking pretty amused. His orc summons are absolutely tearing into the fortress guards, pushing them back with ease. He walks right into the middle of the fight, looking more like a tourist than a guy leading a raid. One of his armored zombies winds up a massive punch, ready to crush anything in its path. A concentrated beam of mana blasts through the air, vaporizing a group of enemies instantly. Seeing how well his new employees are performing brings a pretty dark smile to Ryoga's face. Even the enemy orcs are starting to look nervous, as they realize their own dead are coming back to haunt them. Ryoga's eyes go cold. He's not here to play around or take prisoners. He gives the signal, and his squad of undead chargers slams into the next line of defense. It's a complete brawl in the dirt, with steel and bone clashing everywhere. One of his summons takes a heavy hit from an enemy axe, but it doesn't even flinch. A system notification pops up, warning him that his armored zombie's gear is starting to wear down from the impact. Ryoga just holds out his hand and channels a pulse of dark mana toward his soldiers. The damage vanishes instantly as the armor magically repairs itself, making his front line practically immortal. Some of the fallen orcs are literally being reduced to piles of sludge by the intensity of the magic. A bone spear erupts from the ground, skewering another orc before it can even swing its weapon. The screams of the enemy fill the air as they realize they're completely outmatched. Yuma watches the carnage from the side, looking a bit unsettled by how effortlessly Ryoga is dismantling an entire tribe. He glances over at Ryoga, wondering just how far the guy is willing to go. But then the real heavy hitter steps out, the massive orc lord Ryoga, turned into a zombie earlier. With glowing red eyes and a weapon that's seen better days, the beast looks absolutely terrifying. This thing is a walking tank, and it's still following Ryoga's every whim. It lets out a blast of steam from its mouth, ready to finish off whatever's left of the fortress. Ryoga gives a confident smirk. The siege is basically over, and he's just getting started. The Orc Lord isn't going down without a fight. He swings that massive spear with everything he's got. But Chin and Ryoga just stands there, completely unfazed, as the wind from the strike blows past him. He's done playing games and starts channeling his mana. Dark bone spikes erupt from the ground all around him. The boss gets peppered by the projectiles before he can even react. One of them digs deep into the monster's shoulder, drawing blood. It's not just one hit, multiple bones spear through his limbs and chest at once. The Orc Lord freezes mid-swing, eyes wide with pure agony. Ryoga watches with a cold smirk, keeping his target pinned in place. A final spike drives straight through the beast's chest, letting out a spray of blood. The massive beast towers over the Necromancer, but it's completely helpless now. Keeping this many bones controlled at once is definitely draining his mana fast. Ryoga pushes through the exhaustion, locking the spikes into the ground to make sure the boss stays down. The bones crack and shift, tearing through the orc's body from the inside out. That's it. The special individual is officially pinned like an insect in a display case. He catches his breath, blood trickling down his chin from the effort. He reaches out a hand, activating his life drain to top off his tanks. Pure white energy swirls around him as he starts absorbing the essence of his fallen enemy. He wipes the blood away, feeling the rush of his mana and health coming back. Ryoga takes a look at the horizon, but his work here isn't finished yet. Seeing their leader turned into a pincushion, the rest of the orcs decide it's time to bail. The protagonist's eye glows with a menacing green light. He uses his bone control to snap the legs of every single fleeing orc. They collapse into the dirt, screaming as their escape is cut short. Nobody gets to leave this village alive. A new summon rises from the carnage, cloaked in dark energy. The boss is dead, and his massive weapon is left lying in the blood-soaked dirt. Yuma and the rest of the team finally catch up, finding a field full of loot and mana stones. Ryoga's hand reaches for the prize he's been waiting for. This is the Blood Axe, a rare grade weapon that's definitely worth the trouble. He picks it up with a grin, satisfied with a haul. He hands the weapon over to Yuma to handle the logistics. The Necromancer tells them he's going to go rest, but he's got something else on his mind. He walks up a hill to find a lonely, dead tree standing against the sunset. He looks up at the gnarled branches, knowing this isn't just any old tree. He lets out a heavy breath, holding a piece of bone in his hand. A dark fire seems to burn in his eyes as he prepares for his next move. He tightens his grip and gets ready to strike. He swings the bone with a sharp crack, calling out into the empty air. Suddenly, the tree starts pulsing with a terrifying dark aura. A massive shadow spirit with a single, glowing red eye manifests from the wood. This is exactly who Ryoga came for, Soku Kashiwagi, a legend forgotten by time. The massive shadow spirit of Soku Kashiwagi looms over Chinen Ryoga, radiating pure hostility. The legendary mage fighter is clearly confused, and demands to know how this kid even knows his name. Ryoga just gives him a knowing smirk. He knows everything about the hero history forgot. This lonely tree was the only cenotaph for those whose names were erased from the books. Soku Kashiwagi's spirit flickers, the memories of his life as a powerhouse on the front lines starting to surface. He was the one who saved the country during the Great Cataclysm, but nobody remembers his sacrifice. Ryoga looks out over the landscape, ready to remind the spirit of what actually happened 35 years ago. The shadow of the legendary fighter seems to burn with a dark, vengeful energy as the truth starts to come out. Flashback to the southern agricultural zone, where Soku and his unit were protecting a crowd of terrified civilians. Soku is on the radio, desperately shouting for backup as the monsters close in on them. A massive beast towers over the group, and they're running out of time and options. Naruhito Byakugo, the submaster of the Atagiri Guild, finally picks up the radio with a cold, uncaring expression. Soku's men are doing their best to hold the line, but they're being overwhelmed by the sheer number of monsters. Byakugo watches the timer on his radio, completely unbothered by the screams of his allies on the other end. He's not sending help, he's just listening to them die. The traitor tells Soku that they're being used as bait to buy the main force time to escape through a different gate. Soku can't believe what he's hearing. He's been abandoned by the very people he trusted. The radio crackles as Byakugo mocks him, saying if he dies, he's just another dead man, but if he lives, he's a hero. Soku grits his teeth in pure rage, the realization of the betrayal hitting him harder than any monster could. He slams the radio into the dirt, knowing he's been left to die with the people he was supposed to protect. With no other choice, he charges into the horde, choosing to fight to the death as a true hero. A massive explosion of light and energy marks his final stand against the darkness. He gave everything to save those civilians, only for the Aragiri Guild to take all the credit afterward. Byakugo and his guild painted themselves as the heroes who stopped the wave, while erasing every trace of Soku Kashiwagi. The crowd of soldiers listens as the truth is finally revealed, the legacy of a hero built on a pile of lies. Byakugo, the man the world remembers as a savior, is actually the monster who sent Soku to his grave. The memory of the betrayal burns in the ghost's red eyes, his fury manifesting as a swirling storm of shadow. Soku's spirit stands before Ryoga, his desire for vengeance, finally finding a target after all these years. Ryoga listens calmly as the spirit vows to return from the dead to get his revenge on the man who betrayed him. The spirit's rage is absolute, a terrifying force of nature, ready to tear the world apart. Ryoga just gives him a subtle smile. This is exactly the kind of ally he needs. He makes the dark offer. I'll help you get your revenge. How about making a contract with me and becoming an undead? Ryoga's eyes gleam with a sinister light. The recruitment of a legendary soul has officially begun. Ryoga looks up with a confident smirk, ready to make his next move. The dark, red-eyed spirit of the legendary hero, Soku Kashiwagi, looms over him like a storm cloud. A system notification confirms the deal. Ryoga now officially owns the soul of the Nine, Star Hero. The spirit form begins to merge with a skeletal structure, preparing for its new physical vessel. The result is an imposing, muscular, draconic humanoid with sharp horns and piercing eyes. Ryoga pulls up the stats for his new summon, seeing a high grade 3, Star Undead with incredible potential. He's clearly impressed, pointing out the insane stats his new Eldritch Dragon possesses. The system reveals a rare trait, Magic Fighter. It allows the hero to use both martial arts and magic without any of the usual penalties. Ryoga explains the situation to the Dragon Man, though the legendary hero seems a bit skeptical. Kashiwagi, now in his draconic form, looks at his massive claws as he tries to get used to having a body again. Ryoga just keeps on grinning, knowing he just scored a massive upgrade for his army. The dragon stands tall, but he looks a bit self-conscious about his new look. He's got those sharp, glowing blue eyes, and he doesn't look like he's in the mood for jokes. He crosses his arms, looking completely grumpy, while Ryoga stands there casually with his hands in his pockets. Ryoga tries to play it cool, but the dragon is clearly being stubborn about something. The Dragon Man isn't impressed by any of Ryoga's attempts to lighten the mood. Ryoga lets out a sigh, realizing that managing a legendary hero might be more work than he thought. He starts listing off names, trying to find one that fits a massive dragon warrior. He suggests some legendary names like Orochi or Tiamat, but they're getting zero traction. Ryoga actually starts laughing at how much the dragon hates these cliché names. The dragon is visibly annoyed now, his patience wearing thin with every bad suggestion. They finally settle on a name, Fafnir. It seems like the only one the hero finds tolerable. Ryoga walks away, feeling mentally exhausted after the whole naming debate. Fafnir roars, still bothered by the fact that he's currently standing around completely naked. He spots some old tarp lying around the warehouse and gets an idea. The dragon grabs a piece of the heavy cloth, deciding to improvise some clothing. With a makeshift loincloth now in place, Fafnir looks much more confident as he follows Ryoga. Back at the lab, Ryoga is a bit tense about introducing his new powerhouse to his partner. Shintani, the scientist, is absolutely losing his mind with excitement at the sight of a real dragon man. He rushes over, practically glowing as he prepares to inspect every single scale on Fafnir. Shintani starts prodding Fafnir's tail, ignoring the dragon's deep irritation, while Ryoga watches from the side. Ryoga turns his focus back to business, looking serious as he prepares for the next experiment. He looks over at the orc chief's corpse, thinking about the potential of his next summon while a group of adventurers appears in his thoughts. Green spirit energy starts swirling around Ryoga's hands as he activates his necromancy. Shintani watches with a mix of fear and awe as Ryoga gets ready to work on the orc body. Ryoga crouches down by the dead orc chief, ready to perform some precise magical surgery. He explains the plan to Shintani, who is suddenly very nervous about what's about to happen. The scientist starts flailing around, clearly overwhelmed by the dark magic being casually thrown around. He looks like he's about to have a heart attack from the sheer intensity of it all. Ryoga calls out flesh separation, his hands glowing with intense green light. The spell takes hold immediately, causing the meat to slough off the orc's bones in a split second. The Library of Knowledge Spirit, a tiny girl with white hair, watches the whole thing with an amused expression as Ryoga finishes up. With the flesh gone, the orc chief's skeleton is revealed, and the completion rate is looking incredibly high. Shintani pat Ryoga's shoulder, clearly impressed by the quality of the raw materials they've just prepared. The stable quality of the bones is exactly what Ryoga needs for the next stage of the skeleton's creation. Ryoga flashes a satisfied smirk as the ritual begins to take its final shape. The magic takes hold, and a specialized skeleton guard is born, complete with a massive, heavy-duty shield. Ryoga looks over his new 2, Star Undead, noting that it's built specifically for defense. He explains to Shintani that, unlike zombies, skeletons don't rot and can be maintained indefinitely with enough spirit power. Ryoga stands with his arms crossed, confident in his choice to prioritize a defensive tank for his party. He points out that this shield bearer will be perfect for protecting him while he uses his high-risk skills in close range. Shintani looks on, His arms folded as he starts to grasp the tactical advantage of having a permanent meat shield. The lab is finally starting to look like a proper necromancer's den, with all these high-tier summons standing around. Ryoga suddenly mentions that he needs to leave for an errand at a place called the Pantheon. He casually walks off while the library spirit floats nearby, looking just as unbothered as him. Shintani stands there, confused as to why a dark necromancer would have business with a religious authority. The scientist starts screaming in pure shock when he hears the reason. The divine system has officially recognized Ryoga as a saint. The irony is Peak, the world's most dangerous necromancer, is heading to the holy capital to claim his reward. Chinen Ryoga looks completely unbothered, while the tiny library spirit just floats there like his personal cheerleader. But Shintani is having a full-on crisis, clutching his head like his brain is about to explode from whatever news he just got. Ryoga doesn't even move, just giving him this cold stare that says he's 100% done with the dramatics. Shintani is still going off, frantically waving his hands as if that'll help him make sense of Ryoga's insane luck. The scientist finally settles down to think, rubbing his chin and wondering how our guy manages to pull off these miracles. Ryoga finally speaks up, probably telling Shintani to get a grip because things are about to get even crazier. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out this glowing red potion, handling it like it's just some cheap soda. But then he gets this devious smirk, looking at the bottle like he's already planning how to use it to bait some big fish. And dude, check out this evil grin. He's literally surrounded by floating cash and gold, looking like the ultimate shadow boss. Shintani is visibly sweating from the dark aura Ryoga is giving off, while our guy just smiles, holding that potion like he owns the world. The scene shifts to this massive stone tower that looks like it was built by giants, twisting its way up toward the full moon. Ryoga's at the base of the tower now, walking through a market where some old guy is just chilling on the ground. He keeps his cool as he moves through the courtyard, not wanting to draw too much attention to himself. Ryoga heads straight for the main entrance, passing these massive stone pillars that make him look like a tiny ant. He starts the long, boring climb up the spiral stairs, looking like he's regretting not taking an elevator. He stops to look up, and man, those stairs just keep going and going into the darkness. Ryoga's actually struggling now, panting and sweating, while the spirit just floats along beside him, totally unfazed. The spirit's like, how much further? And Ryoga can barely even look at him. He's so winded. They finally make it to the top, where this glowing blue orb is just hovering in the air, waiting for them. The whole place opens up to this massive dome ceiling showing the entire galaxy, and Ryoga just stands there, soaking it all in. System windows start popping up everywhere. Looks like the wealthy one constellation is annoyed, while the one who veils death is getting suspicious. The little spirit is super hyped, but Ryoga's eyes are locked on the massive presence starting to form in front of him. Out of nowhere, this giant deity with a massive white beard appears, looking down at Ryoga like he's just a bug. The giant reaches out and taps a glowing star with his finger, and the whole room starts to hum with insane energy. A notification pops up. Ryoga just scored 2 new divine spells, Unholy Blessing and Wedge of Retribution. These are straight up buffs that boost his target's stats and let him reflect damage back at anyone who hits them. He gives a satisfied smirk while reading the skill descriptions, knowing he's about to become a major problem for his enemies. The giant spirit lets out a booming laugh, clearly enjoying Ryoga's reaction to his new powers. But the system kills the vibe, saying this giant of the defiant heavens doesn't even have enough divinity to be a real constellation. Ryoga just laughs it off, pointing at the screen and making a joke about how weak the giant's starlight actually is. He leaves the tower with this confident grin, feeling like he's finally got the tools he needs. Later that night, our guy is walking through the city, just blending in with the crowd under the streetlights. He suddenly glances over his shoulder, looks like someone's trying to sneak up on him. It's Satake, this arrogant blonde hunter who's just standing there with a cocky grin and bandages all over his arms. Ryoga just looks at him like, are you serious right now? Not even a little bit intimidated. Satake just keeps laughing, probably thinking Ryoga's an easy mark for a little late-night bullying. Ryoga tells him to shut his mouth, making it clear he doesn't have time for any fake small talk. We see a flashback of Satake being a total jerk, pinning some poor student against a wall and being a general menace. But Ryoga isn't taking any of it. He lets out a massive strike that hits Satake with a huge burst of white energy. He just watches with this cold, superior smile as Satake tries to process what just hit him. The bully is absolutely fuming now, gritting his teeth and looking like he's about to lose his mind. But the fight's clearly over, and he's left rubbing his head in total shock, completely humbled by how easily Ryoga handled him. This guy is grinning like he's just found a new toy, showing off a fancy blue badge on his chest. That crest belongs to the Aragiri group, and it looks like they're finally stepping into the spotlight. Satake is bent over, still reeling from that earlier hit, while Ryoga just stands over him with a look that says, "Stay down." Ryoga doesn't say a word, just watching the bully with that same cold, judgmental stare. You can practically hear the guy's teeth grinding as he tries to process the humiliation of getting rocked in public. Satake finally loses it, his face turning a deep shade of red as he prepares to charge back in. But before he can do anything stupid, a hand reaches out and firmly grabs his arm, stopping him cold. It's the captain, Kashiwagi Jomon, who looks way more composed than his hot-headed lackey. Satake is sweating bullets now, looking up at his leader with a mix of shock and pure terror. Kashiwagi Jomon turns to Ryoga with this eerily calm smile, trying to act like he's just here to settle a misunderstanding. Our guy just stares back, not buying the friendly act for even a second. Satake starts pointing fingers and shouting, probably making up some excuse for why he got his bell rung earlier. Then the blonde idiot starts laughing again, looking like he's convinced himself he's still the top dog here. Ryoga finally breaks his silence, probably dropping a line that's about to kill the mood. And just like that, the grin disappears from Satake's face, replaced by a look of pure confusion. Ryoga gives him this little half smirk, knowing he's successfully gotten under the guy's skin. It works perfectly. Satake starts screaming his head off, looking like he's about to have a total meltdown. To settle things properly, they head over to a high-end training facility to finish what they started. They step into the center of a massive arena and the words "Match Start" flash across the monitors. Ryoga calls out his heavy hitter Fafnir, who looks absolutely massive standing there in his dragonian form. Across from them, Satake grips his spear and lets out a cocky laugh, clearly thinking he's got this in the bag. The floor starts to glow as the system activates, locking them into the combat zone. Satake's grinning like a maniac as the system starts measuring his health and defense for the duel. Ryoga stays calm, watching as the safety barriers deploy to make sure things don't get too lethal. The countdown finishes and the match is officially on. Satake laughs, clearly underestimating what he's about to face. Chinen Ryoga gestures to his head, giving his summon the signal to begin. Fafnir steps forward, looking like a literal wall of muscle. The Dragonian gets into a fighting stance, while Ryoga watches from the sidelines. Even standing still, the summon's presence is overwhelming. His eyes are locked onto his target, waiting for the first move. Satake doesn't hesitate, lunging in with his spear. He puts everything into a lightning-fast thrust. Fafnir leaps back effortlessly, letting the spear bite into the floor. The hunter switches to his third form, trying to catch the dragon with a reflexive follow-up. He follows up with a concentrated pierce, his face twisted in a crazed grin. Kashiwagi Jomon watches the exchange, looking pretty confident in his subordinate. But Fafnir just reaches out and stops the spear cold with his bare hand. He grips the blade tight, not letting it move an inch. Satake is stuck, staring up at the massive summon looming over him. Fafnir pulls back a fist, baring his teeth. He's already seen through the hunter's entire routine. The impact is massive, sending a shockwave through the ground. Ryoga walks over once the dust starts to settle. He has a calm smile on his face, clearly satisfied with the performance. Satake is on the floor, breathless and clutching his shoulder. The master and his summon look down at the struggling opponent. The hunter tries to scramble back, but he's already trapped against the edge. Fafnir doesn't give him a moment to recover. He flashes a predatory grin, knowing the fight is over. A heavy kick connects right with Satake's leg. There's a sickening crunch as the bone snaps clean in half. Fafnir towers over the fallen man, who's now screaming in agony. He reaches down with one massive clawed hand. He pins the hunter to the ground, ending the struggle for good. Kashiwagi Jomon stands frozen, unable to process the total defeat. Ryoga just gives him a smug look, knowing he's the strongest in the room. The system officially announces the match is over, as everyone stares in shock. The captain rushes onto the arena floor to check on his teammate's injury. Ryoga stands over them, completely unfazed by the brutal scene. The rest of the group gathers around, looking at the severe fracture in horror. Kashiwagi Jomon looks up at Ryoga, sweating and desperate for a solution. That's when Ryoga pulls out a strange bottle from his pocket. He holds up a mid-grade potion, an item most people have never even seen. Satake is still writhing on the cracked ground as the team tries to help. Ryoga casually pops the cork on the expensive healing liquid. He pours the glowing potion directly onto the mangled leg with a chilling, devious grin. The potion makes contact, and the leg starts glowing as the bones knit themselves back together instantly. Kashiwagi Jomon can only watch in pure disbelief as a horrific wound vanishes in seconds. He's breaking into a cold sweat, realizing that a potion this powerful shouldn't even exist. Ryoga stands over them, looking like he's just performed a simple card trick instead of a miracle. He wears a knowing smirk, seeing that he's officially hooked his fish. As the hunters tend to their comrade, Ryoga starts to walk off like he's done here. He stops and looks back with a devious grin, waiting for the captain to make a move. Jomon looks up, his expression a mix of anger and desperate curiosity about where those potions come from. Ryoga just smiles, knowing he's got all the leverage he needs now. They move back into the arena center, the air heavy with tension, as the second round begins. Jomon doesn't waste any time, lunging forward with incredible speed. He unleashes the fifth form of his Zephyr swordsmanship, a flurry of strikes called Sharp Attack. The blades connect over and over, lighting up the arena with sparks. Fafnir tries to block, but the sheer speed of the captain's swordsmanship is hard to keep up with. The Dragonian lets out a roar as he's pelted by the continuous barrage of hits. Jomon is a blur of motion, determined to find an opening in the summon's defense. Ryoga stands back with his arms crossed, calmly analyzing the flow of the battle. Fafnir is taking some real heat now, struggling to track the captain's rapid movements. But Ryoga isn't worried. He's just been waiting for the right moment to step in. The summon keeps his guard up, enduring the hits while he waits for his master's support. Ryoga's eyes begin to glow with a sharp, golden light. He reaches out, activating his unholy blessing to bridge the speed gap. Dark, swirling energy erupts from his hand and surges toward Fafnir. The power wraps around the Dragonian, manifesting as a terrifying shadowy presence. Ryoga watches as his summon is consumed by the dark buff. Fafnir is transformed into a towering silhouette of pure dark energy and glowing red eyes. The gaze of the beast is enough to freeze anyone in their tracks. The shadowy figure speaks, offering its complete and total obedience to Ryoga. He reaches out a massive, shadowy claw, ready to tear through anything in his way. Ryoga can't help but smile at the sheer power radiating from his creation. Shrouded in the unholy aura, the summon is now a completely different kind of monster.